morning, America. This is Webinar056 of WX Live, Friday, April 5th at the ungodly hour of 5:15 a.m. Pete's Corner number 6 is going to cover, Pete's going to cover WebDev Loopers again in his series, and this is part 2. There you go. And
Okay.
Pete.
Good morning. I
Vietnam.
won't do the the real loud, obnoxious one. What we're going to do today is take the looper that we built last week. We saw how we added some attributes, and it was already starting to get a little unwieldy. Let's review for just a second where we are. Let's see if it's that one. Let me see which one I've got actually coded. Let me make it the first page of the site. Run it. Yeah. Error schmears.
How come you're
Error schmears. Okay, there's where we were last week. We had created a looper. We added some attributes that we're doing this strike through, coloring them red, depending on the different prices. I think we actually have one in here. Yes, that at a certain price we make it completely invisible.
totally free.
So all that, yeah, exactly. So all that was done with a combination of attributes right here. So not horrible just yet, but you can see how it doesn't take long to start becoming unwieldy. You start getting little bits and pieces of display logic scattered throughout your application. So what I tend to do pretty quickly is turn my loopers, instead of being managed directly from the file, I create an array and then base the looper on the array, and then I take and create a class to manage that array. That way all of my logic is over in the class in one place. I can keep track of it over there instead of it being sprinkled throughout the application. So that's what we're going to do today. Is we're going to take that same looper from last week and turn it into being based on an array instead, and then we're going to create a class to manage that array. So without further ado, let's get started. I guess first question would be, were there any questions from last week? I know, Arnold, you went home, did your homework, played with loopers.
Yeah, it's just lovely.
You lie.
Lie like a fly.
All right, so let's get started. And once again, Uncle Pete has been busy and unprepared, so this is code while you watch. So take into account how awesome WebDev is, that I'm able to do this stuff on the fly with you guys watching. This isn't the Julia Child's, pop one in the oven, pop the other one out of the oven magic. So all I did was took our looper from last week and made a new copy of it. I'm now going to make this the dynamic page so that we're running this copy. And if we look, we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 attributes already in our looper. So what we're going to do for our array is create an array that contains every one of these attributes. So what we do is we come in.
So you can
here.
can you totally hand code that?
Yeah, you could do right now. It's based on the file. Let me go back over and show you that. Right now, it's based on the file. You could do by programming, which you're actually doing looper add. And what we're going to be doing today is based on a variable. You want to jump over to the Skype Arnold
Yeah,
Michaels.
I'm putting it there.
Okay. Now I'm going to mute my. Sorry
Skype.
about that.
Yeah.
I forgot to do that. Okay. So what we're going to do is turn it into being based on a variable instead. Just need to get stuff on the print screen here real quick so I can see it.
So are you telling me you can describe a looper without putting any attributes in?
No, you still need the attribute. Well, I guess technically you might would be able to, but really you still have the attributes. It's just you can hand code the adding of them instead of doing it during the row display.
I'd like to
So
get to a point where I don't even have to come here and deal with this part and just put hand code in.
well, then why aren't you coding in C#?
Who say I'm
If
not?
you want to, do everything by hand code. All right. So what we're going to do, and this is going to be, although that's not really the intention of this, we're going to get into creating structures and then arrays based on structures and stuff. So you're going to get to learn some more new stuff. So we're going to call this the product structure. And it's got name, string, currency, price, color.
I guess you can always take those attributes and then take out the ATT underscore after.
Yeah. If you type slower than I do. So there, if you recognize that, that's the exact same. All we did was create a structure with a field for every one of our attributes. And I actually don't have product ID in here, but go ahead and add it for prosperity's sake. So then all we do is we declare an array.
What kind of an array is that? Just a regular array?
Yeah, it's just a regular array. But it's an array of that structure.
Okay.
So now, each element of that array is actually a compound. For the Clarion indicted amongst us, this structure is basically a group, and what we have now is an array of that group. So now, on the initialization of the page, we could do for each product. It's actually our file. We can say, and I'll do this the hard way first and then go back into it the easy way. One trick to structures is you can't reference the structure. You have to, because the structure is just a definition. It's not an actual variable. So you got to make like an instance of it. So
Instantiation? Oh my God.
a product is product structure. Now we can come down here and say a product ID equals product ID.
Is there macros in WX? There you go. Oh, don't you just love that?
Yeah, that's if you hold down the Alt key, you can do block editing. Is what
Yeah.
that was.
Like back in the old
Yeah,
DOS days.
before Microsoft got involved.
Yeah.
Runs everyone's life.
So why is that equal red there?
Just because it until I click save, IntelliSense doesn't kick in.
Got it. So it's a good idea to save anyway.
These are actual. We need the logic from our. Well, that's kind of odd, isn't it? Oh, because I can't spell to save my life. That's what that is. I think we might need.
That yellow thing tell you anything? Not found in the structure.
It's really.
Oh,
I think I really confused it.
A product.
Sometimes you can really confuse IntelliSense if you do something like that. I've had to do this a couple of times where I just have to retype the line to get IntelliSense to like the line.
Oh, so the copy stuff, it just didn't like it.
Yeah, it like got itself attached to the wrong object. Now IntelliSense is complaining. A repair project would have fixed that, but it was just easier to retype the line.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so now these aren't actual file fields. They were based on some logic. So let's go get all this logic. And we can put this logic up here. And we can say,
how are you going to do that again? It worked.
yeah, now that I typed it right, it works much better.
Oh, I got you, because the first time it was, yeah, got it. Like down below. Oh, too much.
Oh.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Okay, so now all of our code is right there. And if we run this thing, and one thing that we're going to notice is this thing is going to take a while to run.
Really?
Because
Why is that?
because it's looping through 5,000 records.
Oh, gotcha.
Actually, it didn't take that long.
It did it?
Yeah, we're already here.
Hmm.
So now let's take a look. If we come here, we can add, this is some debugger stuff here. Let's add that expression to the debugger.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, so we
and
can see what's going on. Good.
it did not work. What?
So you put it on the watch list? On the watch.
I just added it, yeah. That we didn't get any records. Why did we not get any records?
For each product. Is it
Oh,
time?
because I'm an idiot, that's why. One other line of code that we might want to add here, array add product. You knew that, right, Arnold? You were just
I
letting me
did.
find it on my own.
Well, the thing is, part of these live webinars is to do things that
Yeah,
we would
exactly.
normally
Yeah,
do, so we wanted to get stuck on purpose.
exactly. What Arnold said. There we go. So now we have an array with 5,248 values in it.
Beautiful.
And as you see, all the logic to make them visible, set the colors, has all been done for us by this logic. So now we have all of our display logic is done. All we got to do is come over to our looper, and the first thing we do is we come in here and we say it's going to be based on a variable, and it's going to be based on our product array. Go ahead and return the ID. Okay, and then all we do is come here, and instead of linking to the file, we come down here and link to the individual elements that are in that.
Hey, Pete.
Yes, sir.
Instead of doing the IDE, remember in the old days or even in the new days of Clarion, there's a dot 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 where you can go to the hand code.
Yeah, there's not really a way to do that in
No,
WebDev.
okay. I'm
Missed
gonna
the description here.
miss that part.
I did initially, but I find that
You get used to it.
yeah, there's so much more richness
Uh-huh.
in all those different attributes and so forth that I don't know how much you could
You gotta
do
spell that
hand
right
coded
first.
anyway.
Oop. Get the A product.
No, as long I don't have to. Oh, I thought you meant description. I say I don't have to spell a description. I just have to spell it consistently.
You did it again, dude.
Okay.
Product.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where my one finger is faster than the other. Okay, so there, that'll solve my first issue there. All right. Now let's go back over and continue our linking. All right, so you follow what I'm doing here. All I'm doing is we're no longer linking directly to the file. We're linking to a row of that product array that we just created.
It's kind of how Clarion does the browsers anyway, right?
Don't know that I get that correlation.
Well, it's a queue actually, you know.
Yeah, behind the scenes, yeah. It's kind of what we're doing, yeah. All right, just make sure I got them all. Now we run it. Take out that, and it didn't work because.
By the way, Michael or anybody's there, on the top of this little panel, there's a full screen button. If you click on that, that'll hide the welcome and the chat and the attendees, and then you can see everything better if you don't know that already. Even in the recording, you can do that.
Okay. The reason it didn't work that first time was because when the page first opened and initialized that looper, at that point the array didn't have any data in it, therefore it was empty. Once we built the array, I had to issue a looper display to reinitialize the looper so that it would display the new values that were in the array. So that's the reason that it didn't work the first time.
So you define the looper. No.
So now we see our page is working exactly the same as it did before.
Mm-hmm.
All of our features are working, except now all of our code is contained in this one nice little succinct routine here. And once we put it into a class, it'll even be better contained than this.
Really?
Yes. So any questions up to this point? At this point, we've changed our looper to being based on the array instead of directly on the file. We've created a structure, created an array of that structure. We've set up all the fields of that array or that structure, and then added that structure to our array, and then we've relinked our looper to the array. Yes, yeah, it's very backwards. The window is like the last thing initialized, and the initialization order is very odd in WebDev and not always logical.
I don't know. That seemed pretty logical to me. What you just did, those steps.
Yeah. What we're talking about is Chris says the looper gets initialized, then the window gets initialized. It's very odd. Well, yes and no. That I don't want them in the looper init because I don't want to rebuild that array every time. And as we move forward, you'll see why that is. You can change specific things in the array. All you need to do is issue a looper display TA init. If I had all this code in the looper init, then that array would get rebuilt every time, which is not what you want to happen. Once we move this into a class, you'll see how we normally do this. So any questions about what we did? If you haven't been working with structures, an array of structures, this syntax here may be a little new to you.
So it's nice to prove it out here first, is what you're saying, before you go building a class.
Yeah, well, I just more of a teaching moment. I would have done this as a class to start with, but really that's it's just much easier to see here. The class is more or less going to do this exact same thing, just in a slightly different way. I could use TA current record. It really doesn't matter. If you go look at the help, since we're based on a variable, most of the displays, the looper displays, actually work exactly the same because we're based on a variable, not based on a file. So TA init is just what I generally use.
TA current, huh? Is that what current?
Yeah,
TA current.
when you're working with a file,
Uh-huh.
TA current. I actually thought it was odd that it's not
I don't see it there.
showing me. Yeah. Sometimes, again, IntelliSense doesn't always
Yeah, TA current selection.
use.
Did you see that?
Okay.
That's
TA
all I
current
saw there.
selection. Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to behave exactly the same for us.
Which is a more proper way, you think?
Again, with a based on a variable, they're exactly the same. If you were based on a file and you're not wanting to refresh and reread the database, you'd want to do current selection so that it only reread that record.
Okay. So that would be the ideal way right here.
Well, again, because of we're using based on a variable, it does not matter whatsoever. If you look at the help, there's a whole matrix of how loopers and tables react to the different refreshes based on whether they're a browsing table, a memory table, those type of issues. So,
Okay.
and we're basically a memory table at this point, and when you're a memory table, almost all the refreshes perform the exact same function. So there's technically no difference between them at all. Okay, so you understand structures, adding the individual fields to the structure, adding that structure to the array. We're ready to move on to making a class.
Yeah, I can't wait. Everybody okay? Looks like it.
Chris is typing.
Okay. He's ready to classify.
All right, well, if there's been one thing said about Uncle Pete, it's that he has a lot of classes. Not a lot of class.
Oh, I didn't say that, no.
But you were thinking it.
No, not at all.
All right, so now let's take our page and save as Looper using a class. Now we'll come over here and we'll make that the default first page. Okay, well, the first thing, how many here have been using Andy's file manager classes and have got that down pat? I don't see a lot of hands flying up. Well, you will recognize that the class that I'm about to use is actually Andy's file manager class because that's all we're doing is a file manager class with adding some additional properties for the attributes. Now, you will notice that mine, I have changed some of the field naming and so forth in the classes because my OCD kicks in and Andy and I's naming conventions are a little different. But this is Andy's file manager class, so I'm not going to go into the file manager class per se because Andy has done a bunch of webinars on that and he can show you all that. Because they're strictly dealing with files, there's no difference between WINDEV or WebDev. There's no interface portion to the classes, so they actually work with either. So just a quick overview, what the file manager classes that Andy has created do is you have two classes for every table. One is is a class that represents an individual record, and this is our product record class. You notice it's got a member for every field that's in our actual physical file. And then there is a manager class that manages an array of those records. And the big magic there is the fetch data goes out, reads all the records, and moves them into the array. And it does this very cool file to array statement, which we could have done over in our page, but because we were dealing with extra fields that weren't in the file, we were going to have to do some hand coding anyway. So file to array didn't work for us, but it will here because classes allow us to use properties. And I will show you why that is so cool in just a minute.
Well, that's a magic thing.
So now, if we take a look, I am declaring an instance of the product management class, and then I'm fetching the data. I'm going to put a debug right here so that we can just see what the class is currently doing. All right, it's executed those two statements. And right now, we see that the project manager product array has an array of 5,242 product record classes. And this is one of those weird things that will blow up the first time I click on it, but doesn't cause any issues. And now we see this is an array of products just like before. We're seeing some extra fields because these are all part of those classes, and this is actually an array of classes instead of just an array of that structure, but the theory is exactly the same. So we could literally right now go link our looper to the members of this class. Our problem is we don't have those extra ones. We don't have price visible, price color, so we need to add those to our class. So how we do that is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab these two pieces of code out of the project because we don't need to declare them at the project level. We're going to come over here. And we don't need to declare any of that. Complain for a little bit. Okay, that's going to be the only code on our window now. So the thing that we need to do is we go into our product record class. This is the class that represents one instance, one record out of the product table. We have the fields that are actually in the table, but then we had some fields that we needed to represent those attributes. And they were, and I'm making those private up here, they were price visible, which was a Boolean, and price color, which is a color, color, price visible, HTML before, HTML after. Okay, so now I've added private members to this class. And the reason I added them as private members is because I'm about to add properties for them. And all we can need to do is we can come over here to our Project Explorer, and for each of these members, we can say generate the property. And we want the property to just be called price color. Price HTML after. Price HTML before. And price visible. Okay, so now now that we've added those properties to our looper, or to our class rather, now we can come over, we can link up our class. Now the content, instead of being the product array, we're now saying the content is the product array inside our product manager class. And from there, pretty much everything else is exactly the same. We just need to link to the proper fields. Again, there's just more fields because we're actually looking at the, I got that wrong. Actually a little weird. Just a second. Sure why I'm not. Now we're seeing them. I just had to save that table so that it refreshed where it was getting its content from, so it would show me all the fields. Okay, so this is product name. Description. Price. Color. Visible. HTML4. And HTML. Okay. You notice we don't have any formatting going on over here because we didn't put any logic into those properties yet, but that's what we're going to do now. And the reason we made those properties is because properties, you code them like variables, but they're actually like little mini functions. They can actually have logic in them. So now if we come to our project manager class, or our product manager class, or record class, I'm sorry. I need to go get what that logic was again. Hang on just a second. Okay, so our first one is price visible. So if we come down here, whenever we retrieve price visible, what we want the logic to say is if price is greater than, I'm sorry, less than 1, then price visible equals false. Price is true. Now let's run again. And now you see we're getting visible prices until we get to our page where there's some that are under $1 and they become invisible. Now how that all worked was because we're linked to the price visible, and what I'll do is I'll actually put this debug here and let you see. Okay, as it displays each row, because we're linked that field, that attribute of the looper to this property, it goes out and pulls that property for this record. Well, that property is actually executing this code every time and says, hey, what is your price? And it's going to return a true or false. So now our code is actually in our record, and the beauty of that is we no longer have to worry about them getting out of sync. Our old code, if we changed the price, we'd also have to execute that code that says, okay, now you got to go make the price visible or not. We don't have to do that anymore because it's in this class property. Anytime we retrieve visible, it's going to go check the price and give us a true or false depending on the price. So now that code is encapsulated inside the class, and it just looks like a variable. We treat it like a variable, and it's always correct. And we can do that for the rest of them. If we go to color, when we retrieve it, we want to say if price less than 15, then price color equals dark red, else color equals negative. And our last one is our HTML before and after. If price is greater than 12 and less than 13.
You should get the slash and the delete.
I got the slash in the delete.
No, the first one on the before.
I don't want it on the before.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
No.
that's before and after. Got it.
I'm not sure why. Oh, because my code is in the wrong place. There we go.
Got it.
Strings. Okay, now we shouldn't have to put anything in the after, because what the after is going to do is return the C price HTML after, which you're always going to reference the before first, and it's going to set the before and after. I believe this is going to work. It all depends on how it references them. It should reference that before first. So let's see what happens. Can't be anything but wrong, right?
I have faith in the
Yep.
uncle.
Yeah, we're getting our strike throughs. So now we've got the same page and looper that we had before, except now the only code on our actual page is that. And where this really starts paying off is, let's add a button here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. We're not really set up for data edits and so forth, but this will give you the example of what we're doing. If we were to say,
You get that product thing again. A product.
man, struggling with that one, you know?
So you're used to using that toolbar more and more, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I may have to do a little more coding, but let's see. Okay, there we went. I just had to give it a chance to work. Okay. So what I've done here is I've created some code, and this is to simulate if this were an edit field and price would change on the fly, you know, by them typing in a new value here, it would automatically affect the screen. So I'm changing the price of this record to be $1. So when we hit this button, and it's taking it a second because it's going through some extra code. All right, notice the price changed to $1, and the color changed. Now, the only code I have in place is changing that price to $1 and redisplaying the looper. Let me try Chris's. I think this is going to make a difference on that speed, but let's see, because that's a valuable lesson if it does. No, I think it would. Okay, so Arnold, test for you. Why did that color change if all I did was change the price to $1? Is this working, Arnold? Arnold.
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry.
Why did the color of that field change if all I did was change the price to $1?
Because what was it before 18 something? So it needed to because
right, but I don't have any code now. Normally, I would have to, I would also have to have some code here to go change that color again, right?
No.
In a procedural language.
Oh yeah, the class took care of it.
Right, because when I change that price to $1, and since this color attribute is linked to that class property, when it refreshed, it went out and said, okay, color less than 15, make it dark red. So that's the beauty of using the class and the properties, is no longer do I have to worry about where that code needs to execute or not execute. That code's always going to execute and keep me in sync. Sure, taking a while. Oh, blew up. What'd I do? Oh, interesting. Oh, because I declared it as, no, I declared it as currency, didn't I? I've had this before. You actually, it forces you to do that.
If you hover over price, wouldn't that tell you it's currency?
No.
Because that's part of the array.
Well, I'm not in debugger.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, the IntelliSense wouldn't tell you. The problem is that it
needs a leading zero.
You can't type 0.99 when
oh, that makes
WebDev
sense because they do a lot of dot
an arrow. Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
It's interpreting, right?
Right. So now if we change that to 99 cents, it disappears altogether because our other property kicked in. So you see how making that looper managed by a class and having all these attributes that are doing your format be properties of that class, a lot of your interface moves up into your class where you don't have to worry about, oh, they changed this, I've got to fire off some logic to reformat this or hide this button or do that. That all can be properties of your class and do it there. And when we get into the more advanced ones that have breaks and all those other great and wonderful things, then you'll really see how much of an advantage that class is, because I've got some loopers that have 20 or 30 attributes, and you start trying to code those and keep them all straight, it becomes a nightmare.
So it's nice to bring it in, do it in classes and chunk out the task and not worry about it, test it out.
Right.
And
Right.
how it works.
Rob's asking, do the classes only get called when you reinit the looper? What's happening is basically that reinitting that looper, it's the same thing. I would have the same problem if this looper were linked to a file. I go and change a record of the file. The looper doesn't show that change until I redisplay the looper. The looper, nothing's happened to reinitialize that looper so that it gets its new data from the array. Just like it wouldn't get new data from the file until I did an init. The difference is that it's not having to go out and hit the database. Everything's in memory. So that's it for today. Let's open up for a little question and answer session, and then we'll talk a little bit about next week. Right. Yeah. The class didn't actually do anything